I thought my first day at Jade Springs Academy would be a fresh start, a chance to rebuild something that resembled a normal life. But as I stood at the campus gate, clutching my 5-year-old son Jerry's hand, all I heard were whispers and mocking laughter rippling through the crowd of students. "Look at that, an Omega bringing his kid to school," someone sneered from my left. The words cut deeper than I wanted to admit, and I felt Jerry's small fingers tighten around mine, his pulse racing against my palm. "Pathetic," another voice added, followed by giggles that spread like wildfire through the gathering crowd. My chest constricted, but I forced myself to keep walking. I pulled Jerry slightly behind me, using my body as a shield against their stares and cruel remarks. These people didn't know our story. They didn't know that Jerry wasn't just my son. He was my entire world, the reason I woke up every morning and fought through every obstacle life threw at us. I would endure their mockery 1,000 times over if it meant keeping him safe and loved. The campus stretched before us, imposing and unwelcoming. Students clustered in groups, their conversations dying down as we passed, only to resume in hushed, judgmental tones once we were a few steps away. Every Omega and Beta student seemed to regard me as some kind of anomaly, a breach in the natural order of their pristine academic environment. My shoulder bag felt heavier than usual, weighed down not just by Jerry's lunchbox and crayons, but by the burden of being different. Jerry's hand trembled in mine, and I could feel the fear radiating from his small frame. "Dad, why are they all staring at us?" His voice was barely above a whisper, fragile and uncertain. I knelt down to meet his eyes, my knees pressing against the cold pavement. His soft brown hair fell across his forehead, and I gently brushed it back, offering him the most reassuring smile I could manage. "Some people don't understand, sweetheart, but you are absolutely perfect, and that's all you need to remember. Always." He smiled back, but I could see the lingering anxiety in his eyes, that shadow of doubt that I desperately wished I could erase forever. Just as I was about to stand and continue toward the main building, something shifted in the air around us. A scent hit me with the force of a physical blow. Cedar, musk, and an overwhelming wave of dominance that seemed to pulse through the atmosphere. My Omega instincts flared to life instantly, every nerve in my body suddenly alert and hyper-aware. I lifted my head and followed the source of that intoxicating, terrifying scent. The crowd in the center courtyard parted like a sea, students stepping aside with a mixture of reverence and fear. And then I saw him, tall, commanding, with a sharp jawline that could have been carved from marble and cold gray eyes that seemed capable of cutting through any pretense or deception. Brock Lee. The name alone carried weight in the eastern states. An alpha emperor who controlled not just this academy, but the entire network of educational institutions and governing councils in the region. I had only heard stories about him, whispered rumors of his power and ruthlessness, but seeing him in person was an entirely different experience. His presence was overwhelming, suffocating in its intensity. I found myself rooted to the spot, unable to move or even breathe properly. Brock's gaze swept across the courtyard with casual authority, and then for the briefest moment his eyes landed on me. It was a quick glance, nothing more, or so I thought. But then his attention shifted to Jerry and everything changed. He stopped walking, completely stopped. His confident stride faltered and his entire body went rigid. Those cold gray eyes locked onto my son's face with an intensity that made my blood run cold. It was as if he had seen a ghost, as if the world had suddenly tilted on its axis and nothing made sense anymore. I instinctively tightened my grip on Jerry's hand, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst from my chest. Every protective instinct I possessed screamed at me to grab my son and run, to put as much distance as possible between us and this powerful, dangerous stranger. But I couldn't move. I was transfixed by the expression on Brock's face, confusion, shock, and something else I couldn't quite identify. Recognition? But how was that possible? I had never met this man before in my life, and Jerry was mine. Only mine. "Dad, why is that man staring at me?" Jerry's whispered question snapped me back to reality. I quickly pulled him behind me, positioning myself between my son and Brock's penetrating gaze. The alpha took one step forward, his movements slow and deliberate, as if he were approaching something precious and fragile. But then he stopped himself, visibly exerting control over whatever impulse had driven him to move closer. Our eyes met across the distance, And for one electrifying second, I saw something in his expression that shook me to my core. There was intensity there, yes, but also a desperate, searching quality that I couldn't understand. And beneath it all, something that looked disturbingly like recognition. The moment stretched between us, thick with unspoken questions and impossible implications. Students around us had gone completely silent, sensing the tension that crackled in the air like static electricity before a storm. How could he possibly recognize Jerry? We had never been here before. I had never crossed paths with anyone from this world of power and privilege. Jerry's entire life had been spent in modest apartments and quiet neighborhoods, far removed from the circles that someone like Brock Lee inhabited. And yet, the way he was looking at my son, with that mixture of shock, longing, and something dangerously close to possessiveness, sent ice running through my veins. Finally, Brock seemed to collect himself. He straightened his shoulders, his expression smoothing into an unreadable mask, but his eyes remained fixed on Jerry for another heartbeat, before he turned and continued walking, his entourage quickly falling into step behind him. The crowd began to disperse, their whispered conversations returning with renewed energy. I could hear fragments of speculation and gossip swirling around us, but I blocked it all out. My sole focus was on getting Jerry to his classroom and then figuring out what had just happened. As we walked toward the main building, my mind raced with questions I had no answers for. Who was Jerry to Brock Lee? Why had the most powerful alpha in the eastern states looked at my son as if he had just found something he had been searching for his entire life? I glanced down at Jerry, who was now humming quietly to himself, seemingly unaffected by the strange encounter. His innocence was both comforting and terrifying. Whatever was happening here, whatever connection Brock believed existed, I would protect my son from it with every fiber of my being, because Jerry was mine. I had raised him, loved him, cared for him through every fever and every nightmare. No one, not even an alpha emperor, had the right to disrupt the life we had built together. But even as I made that silent vow, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. After yesterday's unsettling encounter, I convinced myself that Brock Lee's interest had been nothing more than a strange coincidence. Perhaps Jerry reminded him of someone from his past. Perhaps I had misread the entire situation, letting my protective instincts create drama where none existed. Those comforting rationalizations lasted exactly until the next morning. I was walking Jerry to the nursery section, navigating the maze of corridors that still felt unfamiliar and intimidating. The building was quieter at this hour, with most students already settled into their early classes. I was explaining to Jerry what activities he might do today, when a prickling sensation crawled up my spine, the unmistakable feeling of being watched. I turned my head sharply and spotted him at the far end of the corridor. Brock stood motionless, arms crossed over his broad chest, his penetrating gaze fixed directly on me. Even from this distance, I could feel the weight of his attention like a physical presence pressing against my skin. My heartbeat accelerated immediately. I quickly said goodbye to Jerry, kissing his forehead and watching him disappear into the cheerful chaos of the nursery room. Then I turned and started walking briskly toward my own classroom, determined to avoid any interaction. I made it perhaps 20 feet before his voice stopped me cold. Flynn, just my name. Nothing more. But the way he said it, low, commanding, with an undertone of something I couldn't identify, made my feet freeze in place as if they had been nailed to the floor. I slowly turned around, my breath catching as I watched him approach. Each step he took was measured and confident, closing the distance between us with the inevitability of a predator stalking prey. The corridor suddenly felt too narrow, too confined, and I found myself backing up slightly despite my determination not to show fear. He stopped just close enough to invade my personal space without actually touching me. Up close he was even more imposing than I remembered. Not just physically but in the sheer force of his presence. "What is your name?" he asked, his tone casual, as if we were having a perfectly normal conversation. The question caught me off guard. Surely he already knew he had just used my name. "Flynn," I managed to say, my voice steadier than I felt. His eyes narrowed slightly, studying my face with an intensity that made me want to look away. But I held his gaze, refusing to be intimidated. "And your son, what do you call him?" My jaw clenched involuntarily. The question seemed simple enough, but there was something beneath it, a current of urgency and need that set every alarm bell in my mind ringing. "Jerry," I answered, then added with deliberate firmness, "and he is my son. Mine alone." Something flickered across Brock's features. Was it amusement? Satisfaction? I couldn't tell. His lips curved into what might have been called a smile. But there was nothing warm about it. The expression was calculated, controlled, dangerous. "Interesting," he murmured. And before I could respond or demand an explanation, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing alone in the empty corridor with my heart racing and my mind spinning. The rest of the day passed in a blur of distraction. I sat through my classes barely absorbing any information, my thoughts constantly circling back to that brief, charged encounter. What did Brock want? Why was he asking about Jerry? And why did every instinct I possessed tell me that this was only the beginning? When the final bell rang, I practically ran to the nursery section, eager to collect Jerry and escape the academy's suffocating atmosphere. But when I reached the doorway and looked inside, my heart stopped completely. Brock was there, kneeling on the colorful floor mat to bring himself down to Jerry's level. My son was showing him a crayon drawing, his small voice animated with enthusiasm as he explained what he had created. "See, this is my dad, and this is me," Jerry was saying, pointing to stick figures rendered in bright primary colors. "And this is our apartment. And this is the park where we go on Saturdays." Brock's expression had transformed entirely from the cold, authoritative mask he wore in the corridors. His harsh features had softened, and he was looking at Jerry with such tender focus, such careful attention, that it made my chest ache for reasons I didn't want to examine. I forced myself to move, stepping into the room with what I hoped was calm authority. "Jerry, time to go, sweetheart." My voice came out higher than intended, betraying the urgency I was trying to conceal. Jerry looked up, his face breaking into a bright smile. "Dad, look what I made." Brock rose to his full height in one fluid motion, and suddenly the room felt much smaller. I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact, and I found myself taking an involuntary step backward, my body to his overwhelming alpha presence, before my mind could stop it. "Running away from me, Flynn?" His tone was teasing, almost playful, but his eyes remained serious and searching. "I am not running from anyone," I replied, but even I could hear the lack of conviction in my voice. Before I could move to collect Jerry's backpack, Brock reached out and caught my wrist. His grip was not rough, in fact, it was surprisingly gentle, but it was firm enough to make escape impossible. His skin was warm against mine, and I felt goosebumps rise along my arm despite myself. "You have no idea how special Jerry is, do you?" he said quietly, his voice dropping to a register that only I could hear. Cold dread washed through me. I jerked my hand back, breaking his hold through sheer determination. "You don't know anything about him," I shot back defensively. Brock's hand caught mine again, this time holding on more insistently. "But I do know, Flynn. I know everything." He leaned closer, his breath warm against my ear as he whispered words that would haunt me for the rest of the night. "Jerry is my son, and I have been searching for him for the past 5 years." The world tilted beneath my feet. My omega scent betrayed my shock and fear, releasing involuntarily, lavender and vanilla flooding the small space between us. I watched Brock's pupils dilate as he inhaled deeply, his entire body responding to my scent in a way that was both primal and terrifying. "No," I whispered, shaking my head in denial. "That is impossible. You are lying." But even as I said the words, doubt crept into my mind. Because if anyone was going to lie about something this significant, they would not do it with that look of absolute certainty in their eyes. They would not tremble slightly as they spoke, as if the admission cost them something precious. Brock released my wrist and stepped back, giving me space to breathe. "Think about it, Flynn. Really think. Where did Jerry come from? What do you actually know about his history before you found him?" Before I could formulate a response, he turned and left the nursery, leaving me standing there with my mind reeling and my entire world suddenly feeling much less stable than it had been just moments before. Sleep was impossible that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, watching shadows shift across the surface as car headlights passed by outside. Brock's words played on an endless loop in my mind, each repetition making them feel more real and more terrifying. "Jerry is my son." It was absurd. It had to be. I had adopted Jerry 5 years ago when he was just a few months old. The orphanage director had explained that he had been abandoned on their doorstep in the middle of the night, wrapped in a plain blanket with no identifying information. They had tried to find his biological parents but came up empty. Eventually they had approved my adoption application and Jerry became mine. But what if there was more to the story? What if the pieces I thought fit together perfectly were actually part of a much larger, more complicated puzzle? I rolled over and looked at Jerry's sleeping form in the small bed across the room. His chest rose and fell with peaceful, steady breaths, completely unaware of the storm gathering around us. In the dim light filtering through the curtains, I could see his delicate features, the curve of his cheek, the way his hair fell across his forehead. He was mine. I had fed him, comforted him through nightmares, taught him to tie his shoes and write his name. Biology could not compete with 5 years of love and dedication, could it? The next day at the academy, I attempted to avoid Brock entirely. I took different routes through the building, timed my movements to minimize any chance of crossing paths with him, and kept my head down in the corridors. For most of the morning, my strategy seemed to work. Then lunch break arrived, and my carefully constructed defenses crumbled. I was sitting in the library, trying to focus on a textbook that might as well have been written in ancient hieroglyphics, for all the sense it was making to my distracted brain. When Brock's shadow fell across our table, I knew my luck had run out. "We need to talk, properly." His tone left no room for negotiation. He was carrying a leather portfolio under one arm, and something about the way he held it suggested its contents were important. Against my better judgment, I found myself nodding and following him to an empty study room at the map of the library. Once the door closed behind us, sealing us in the small, quiet space, Brock opened the portfolio and removed a manila folder. He placed it on the table between us and slid it toward me. "Look at this," he said simply. My hands trembled as I opened the folder. Inside were photographs, professional hospital photos of a newborn baby, tiny and perfect, wearing one of those standard hospital identification bracelets. The name on the bracelet read, "Lee Baby Boy," with a date that made my stomach drop. 5 years and 4 months ago. Beneath the photos were official documents, medical records, a police report filed for a kidnapping case, news clippings about the mysterious disappearance of the Alpha Emperor's infant son. Every piece of paper in that folder told the same story. Brock Lee had indeed had a child who had vanished without a trace, and the case had never been solved. "This does not prove anything," I said, but my voice lacked conviction. "Many children go missing. This could be anyone." Brock pulled out another photograph. This one clearly more recent. "A forensic artist created this," he explained, "based on genetic projection from my features and those of my late partner. This is what my son would look like at 5 years old." I took the image with shaking hands and felt my entire world collapse. The sketch showed a child with Jerry's exact nose, his distinctive eyes, the particular way his smile curved slightly higher on one side. It was not just similar, it was identical. "No," I heard myself say, but it sounded distant, unconvincing. "Lots of children share similar features. This is just coincidence." Brock moved around the table and knelt beside my chair, his hands coming up to cup my face, forcing me to meet his eyes. "Flynn, listen to me. I am not crazy. The moment I saw Jerry, I knew. He has my blood running through his veins. I can feel it in every fiber of my being." His voice cracked on the last words, and I witnessed something I never thought I would see. Vulnerability in Brock Lee's eyes. Raw, unfiltered pain that spoke of years of searching, hoping and nearly giving up. "If this is true," I managed to say, my own voice unsteady, "then how did Jerry end up at that orphanage? Why would someone abandon him there?" Brock's hands dropped from my face and he stood, turning toward the window. "That is exactly what I need to understand. Someone took my son from me, Flynn. Someone stole him and left him where he might never be found. I need to know who and why." He turned back to face me, his expression intense. "That is why I need your cooperation. Let us do a DNA test. If I am wrong, I will disappear from your lives completely. You will never see me again. But if I am right, then what?" I interrupted, rising from my chair with sudden urgency. "If you are right, you will take him from me. You will use your power and influence to tear apart the only family Jerry has ever known?" Brock closed the distance between us in 2 strides, his hand reaching out to grasp my chin, tilting my face up toward his. I would never take Jerry away from you, Flynn. Never. You have been his parent for 5 years. You have given him love and stability and everything a child needs. I could never repay that debt. Then, what do you want? I whispered. His thumb brushed across my cheek in a gesture so tender it made my breath catch. I want to be part of his life. Part of both your lives. If Jerry is truly my son, then I want the chance to know him, to be his father alongside you, not instead of you with you. The implications of what he was suggesting crashed over me like a wave. He was not just talking about shared custody or visitation rights. He was proposing something far more intimate, far more complicated. I need time to think, I said, pulling away from his touch before I lost myself in it entirely. Brock nodded, though I could see the frustration and impatience warring in his expression. Think quickly, Flynn, because people at this academy are already talking. And if my enemies discover that my son is and unprotected, they will not hesitate to use him against me, against us. The threat was not idle, and we both knew it. In Brock's world of power and politics, a lost heir suddenly found would be seen as either a valuable asset or a dangerous liability, depending on who was doing the seeing. All right, I finally agreed, my voice barely above a whisper. We will do the DNA test. But whatever the results show, we do this on my terms. Jerry's well-being comes first. Always. Brock's expression softened slightly, relief evident in the subtle relaxation of his shoulders. Agreed. His well-being comes first. I would not have it any other way. As I left the study room and made my way through the now empty library, I could not shake the feeling that I had just crossed a threshold from which there was no return. Whatever the DNA test revealed, our lives would never be the same again. The DNA test sample collection took only minutes, but the waiting period that followed felt like an eternity stretched across broken glass. Brock had arranged for everything to be processed through his private laboratory to ensure both speed and absolute confidentiality. For 3 agonizing days, I attempted to maintain some semblance of normalcy, taking Jerry to school, attending my classes, playing with him in the evenings, but my mind refused to focus on anything except that sealed envelope waiting somewhere in a sterile lab. Jerry remained blissfully unaware of the storm gathering around him. He continued to be the carefree child who found adventure in every ordinary moment, who laughed at silly jokes and chased butterflies during recess. But I noticed something shifting in the background of our daily routine. Brock's presence in Jerry's life was growing, subtly but unmistakably. One afternoon, Jerry came running up to me after nursery, with his backpack bouncing against his small shoulders. Dad, Uncle Brock said he wants to show me his office. Can I go? Please? His eyes were bright with excitement, completely innocent of the weight such a simple request carried. I forced a smile onto my face, swallowing the complicated emotions churning in my chest. Of course, sweetheart. That sounds wonderful. On the 4th day, my phone rang while I was sitting in the academy library pretending to study. Brock's name appeared on the screen and my heart immediately began racing so fast I thought I might pass out. Flynn. His voice was controlled, but I could hear the tension underneath. The laboratory has sent the results. I would like us to review them together. My mouth went dry. When? Now. I am sending a car for you. 20 minutes later, I found myself in a private office in one of the academy's administrative buildings. A space I had never seen before, all dark wood and leather furniture that spoke of power and privilege. The room felt too quiet, too serious, and the sealed manila envelope sitting on the mahogany desk between us seemed to pulse with potential devastation. Brock stood by the window, his back rigid, hands clasped behind him. When he heard me enter, he turned, and for the first time since I had met him, I saw genuine uncertainty in his expression. Whatever these results show, Flynn, I want you to know something first. He moved away from the window, coming to stand across the desk from me. I have no intention of causing harm to you or Jerry. That has never been my goal. I could only nod, not trusting my voice to remain steady. Brock reached for the envelope with hands that trembled almost imperceptibly. He broke the seal and pulled out the single sheet of paper inside. I watched his face as he read, saw all the color drain from his features, saw his fingers tighten on the document until the paper crumpled slightly at the edges. I could not bear the suspense. I stepped forward and took the page from his hands. my eyes scanning frantically for the relevant information. Probability of paternity. Conclusion. Brock Lee is the biological father of the child known as Jerry. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. I read the line again and again, hoping desperately that I had somehow misunderstood, that the numbers would rearrange themselves into a different truth. But they remained stubbornly, devastatingly clear. Brock turned away from me and walked back to the window. I could see his reflection in the glass. Could see his shoulders shaking with the effort of containing emotions too powerful to suppress. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough and broken. 5 years. The words came out barely above a whisper. 5 years I have spent searching for my son. Every single night, lying awake wondering where he was, if he was safe, if he was even still alive. Do you have any concept of what that does to a person? The guilt, the helplessness. I took a hesitant step toward him, my own tears now flowing freely down my cheeks. Brock, he turned to face me and I saw something I never imagined I would witness. Brock Lee, the powerful Alpha Emperor, crying. Tears streamed down his face unchecked and he made no effort to hide them. You cannot possibly understand, Flynn. You cannot know what it means to lose your child, to have them stolen from you in the night, to spend every waking moment blaming yourself for not protecting them better. I died a little more each day, tormented by thoughts of what might be happening to him, whether he was crying for me, whether anyone was there to comfort him. My heart broke for him in that moment. Whatever complicated feelings I harbored about this situation, I could not deny the authenticity of his pain. I did not know Brock. If I had known the truth when I adopted him, but you gave him love. Brock interrupted, moving closer until he was standing directly in front of me. You gave him a home, a family, everything a child needs to thrive. You saved him, Flynn, and I have no words adequate to express my gratitude for that. We stood there, two people bound together by a child neither of us was willing to lose, tears mixing with the complicated emotions swirling between us. In that moment, something fundamental shifted. This was no longer just about Jerry. It was about us, about what we might become together. What happens now? I finally managed to ask. Brock reached up and cradled my face in his hands, his touch gentle despite the strength I knew he possessed. Now we tell Jerry the truth, together. And then we move forward as what we should have been from the beginning. A family. You, me and our son. The possessive pronoun sent a shiver through me, but it was not fear. It was something else entirely. Something I was not quite ready to name but could no longer deny existed. Telling Jerry the truth proved to be the most challenging conversation I had ever faced. We gathered in Brock's private estate, a sprawling property that would soon become our home, though I was still adjusting to that reality. The living room where we sat felt enormous, decorated with tasteful artwork and expensive furniture that seemed designed more for impressing visitors than for actual comfort. Jerry sat on the sofa between Brock and me, his small legs swinging above the floor, not quite long enough to reach the ground. His innocent eyes moved between our faces, clearly sensing that something important was about to happen but unable to guess what. I started, keeping my voice as gentle as possible. Sweetheart, do you remember when you asked me about your other parent? About where they were? Jerry nodded slowly, his expression becoming more serious. Well, it turns out that Uncle Brock is actually that person. He is your biological father. Jerry's eyes widened as he processed this information. He looked at Brock with renewed curiosity, then back at me, then at Brock again. So, Uncle Brock is my dad. Like you are my dad? My throat tightened with emotion, but I managed to nod. Yes, exactly like that. Brock shifted to kneel on the floor in front of Jerry, bringing himself to eye level with our son. His voice was thick with emotion but remarkably steady. When you were very small, Jerry, just a gay, some bad people took you away from me. I have looked for you every single day since then. I never stopped hoping I would find you. And now, finally, here you are. Jerry tilted his head, thinking hard. I could practically see his young mind working through the implications. Does this mean I get to live with both of you now? Brock's face broke into a genuine smile, the first truly unguarded expression I had seen from him. Yes. You, Flynn, and I will all live together, like a real family. The smile that spread across Jerry's face was pure sunshine. That is amazing. I have 2 dads now. Wait until I tell everyone at school. He launched himself at Brock, wrapping his small arms around the alpha's neck in an enthusiastic hug. Brock held him carefully, as if Jerry were made of precious glass, and I saw tears gathering in his eyes again. When Jerry finally released him and turned to hug me as well, I caught Brock's gaze over our son's head. The gratitude and something deeper, something warmer in his expression made my heart skip several beats. The following days brought significant changes. Moving into Brock's estate felt surreal, like stepping into a life that belonged to someone else. But Brock worked hard to make the transition as smooth as possible, giving both Jerry and me space to adjust while still making it clear that this was now our home as much as his. We established new routines. Mornings became a coordinated effort. Brock would help Jerry get dressed and ready for school while I prepared breakfast in the massive kitchen with the assistance of the estate's staff, who were unfailingly polite and discreet. Evenings were spent together, all three of us playing games or watching movies in the home theater, with Jerry inevitably falling asleep curled between us on the enormous sofa. Jerry adapted to the changes with the remarkable resilience of childhood, accepting his new reality with an ease that both amazed and humbled me. But I struggled more than I wanted to admit. Everything felt too large, too luxurious, too different from the modest life Jerry and I had built together. One evening, after we had tucked Jerry into his new bedroom, a space 3 times the size of our entire previous apartment, Brock found me on the terrace, staring out at the manicured gardens and distant city lights. "You seem troubled," he observed, coming to stand beside me at the railing. I debated deflecting, but decided honesty might serve us better. "This is all happening very fast. A week ago, you were a stranger. Now we are living in your house, restructuring our entire existence around this new family dynamic. Does it feel wrong?" His voice was carefully neutral, but I could sense the tension beneath the question. "No," I admitted. "That is what troubles me most. It feels surprisingly right, and I am not sure what to do with that realization." Brock turned to face me fully, his expression serious. "Flynn, I need to tell you something. And I need you to hear me without interrupting until I finish." My heart began to race. "All right, this arrangement, this family we are building, it is not just about Jerry for me anymore." He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "These past few days watching you with our son, seeing your warmth and kindness, experiencing what it means to share this journey with you, I have come to realize that you matter to me, Flynn. Not just as Jerry's other parent, but as someone I am drawn to in ways I did not anticipate." My breath caught in my throat. "Brock," he held up a hand. "I know this complicates an already complex situation, but I refuse to build our relationship on deception or hidden feelings. You attract me, Flynn. Your courage, your fierce love for Jerry, the way you face challenges without backing down, all of it draws me to you. I want us to be more than just co-parents sharing a space." The confession hung in the air between us, heavy with possibility and risk. I should have been shocked or resistant, but the truth was that I had felt the pull too. Watching Brock with Jerry, seeing the gentle father beneath the powerful alpha exterior, noticing the small ways he tried to make me comfortable and valued, it had all been eroding my defenses steadily. "I feel it too," I whispered. "I have been trying not to, trying to maintain some kind of emotional distance. But it is becoming impossible." Brock stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. He cupped my face in his hands, his touch infinitely tender, then stopped trying to resist. "Let us see where this leads. Let us try to build something real, not just for Jerry, but for us as well." He leaned forward until our foreheads touched, and in that gentle contact, I felt the last of my resistance crumble. We stood there in the moonlight, 2 people who had been brought together by extraordinary circumstances, beginning to acknowledge that what was growing between us might be just as extraordinary. "We can try," I agreed softly. "We can build this family together, all 3 of us." The following week brought an unexpected development. Brock informed me that the Eastern Council had scheduled a major gathering, bringing together all the influential alphas and political leaders from across the region, and he wanted Jerry and me to attend at him. "This is necessary, Flynn," he explained as we sat in his study, away from Jerry's curious ears. "My enemies need to understand that Jerry has been found and is under my protection. And you also fall under that protection now. The official announcement needs to be made publicly to prevent any attempts at using either of you against me." Anxiety twisted in my stomach. You are asking me to stand in front of all those powerful people and essentially declare myself as your Omega? I am asking you to stand beside me as my equal partner, he corrected gently. As Jerry's other father and as someone important to me personally. Your status as an Omega is irrelevant to me. Your value comes from who you are, not your designation. Despite my nervousness, his words warmed something deep inside me. What if I make a fool of myself? I have never been to anything like this before. Brock smiled and reached across the desk to take my hand. You could never be foolish. You simply need to be yourself. That has always been enough. The evening of the event arrived far too quickly. Brock's team had arranged formal attire for both Jerry and me. Elegant but not ostentatious. Designed to show that we belonged without trying too hard to prove it. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I barely recognized the person staring back. Jerry, dressed in a miniature suit that made him look impossibly grown up, was practically vibrating with excitement. Dad, are there going to be lots of important people there? Will they want to talk to me? I knelt down to adjust his tie. There will be many important people. Yes. But remember, you are just as important as any of them. Be polite, be yourself, and stay close to me. Or Brock, alright. The venue was magnificent. A historic building with soaring ceilings and crystal chandeliers that scattered light across marble floors. As we entered, conversation dimmed noticeably, and I felt hundreds of eyes turn toward us. My instinct was to shrink back, but Brock took my hand firmly in his, the gesture both reassuring and unmistakably public. We walked through the crowd toward the raised platform at the front of the hall. Jerry held my other hand, his earlier excitement tempered now by the solemnity of the occasion. I could feel him pressing closer to my side as we moved through the sea of scrutinizing faces. When we reached the platform, Brock stepped up to the microphone. The room fell into absolute silence. Every person present giving him their complete attention. Thank you all for coming tonight. His voice carried authority and command, filling the entire space effortlessly. As most of you know, 5 years ago I experienced a devastating loss when my infant son was kidnapped. I have spent every day since searching for him, following every lead, refusing to accept that he might be gone forever. He paused, and I saw genuine emotion flicker across his features before he continued. Tonight I stand before you with incredible news. My son has been found. He is safe, healthy, and thriving. Brock gestured for Jerry to join him. Our son hesitated for just a moment before climbing the steps. Brock lifted him easily, holding him so everyone could see. This is Jerry, my son, my heir. The hall erupted in shocked murmurs and whispered conversations. Brock waited for the noise to settle before continuing. Jerry's survival and well-being are due entirely to this person. He looked directly at me, extending his free hand in invitation. My legs felt like water, but I forced myself to climb the steps and stand beside them. Flynn has been Jerry's parent for the past 5 years, providing him with love, stability, and everything a child needs to flourish. He saved my son's life in ways I am only beginning to fully comprehend. His next words made my face burn with a mixture of pride and embarrassment. Flynn is also my Omega and my partner. Together, we will raise Jerry and build the family he deserves. The declaration sent a wave of surprised reactions through the assembled crowd. Some faces showed approval, others shock, and a few revealed barely concealed displeasure. But Brock's expression remained firm and unapologetic. Let me be absolutely clear about one thing. His voice dropped to a tone that sent chills down my spine, not from fear but from the sheer force of will behind the words. Jerry and Flynn are under my direct protection. Any threat to them, any attempt to use them as leverage against me, will be met with the full extent of my resources and power. This is not a negotiation. This is a promise. The silence that followed was profound and heavy. Brock set Jerry down carefully, then turned to me. In front of everyone, all the powerful alphas, all the political leaders, all the witnesses who would carry this story throughout the region, he cupped my face in his hands and kissed me. The kiss was gentle but unmistakable in its claiming nature. When we finally separated, I saw promise and protection and genuine affection in his eyes. Jerry, standing beside us, let out a delighted giggle. My dads are the best, he announced loudly enough for the front rows to hear, and scattered laughter rippled through the crowd, breaking some of the tension. That night, after we returned home and Jerry had fallen asleep almost immediately from exhaustion, Brock and I found ourselves on the balcony overlooking the gardens. The night air was cool and fresh, filled with the scent of jasmine from the flower beds below. "You were terrified up there, were you not?" Brock asked with a small smile. I nodded, absolutely petrified. "But thank you for everything tonight, for standing up for us, for making us part of your world." Brock pulled me into his arms, wrapping them securely around my waist. "You have given me back something I thought was lost forever, Flynn. You and Jerry have given me a family, a future, a reason to be more than just the emperor everyone fears. I am the one who should be grateful." I rested my head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Strong, reliable, constant. "We are a family now," I said quietly. "Whatever challenges come, we face them together." Brock tilted my chin up so he could look into my eyes. "Always. That is my promise to you and to Jerry. No matter what the future holds, I will protect you both with everything I have. You are mine now, and I take care of what is mine." In that moment, standing in his arms under the stars, I finally understood what it meant to be home.